Hey skiers, I'm Jeff from Skiessentials.com.
And I'm Bob. How's it going?
Bob and I are here today to talk about the new 2025 Black Crows Corvus. This should be a pretty interesting conversation. The Corvus has historically been a very interesting ski.
It was the ski.
For Black Crows.
For Black Crows.
Yeah, I mean, you could say it is the most important ski in Black Crow's history.
Yep.
I would say in the last 3 years, particularly, that hasn't necessarily been the case.
No. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So kind of what I'm getting at is it's been a little bit weird. That's fine.
Yeah.
You know, it was a pretty specific ski for a specific application, and it was pretty weird. The Corvus has been their kind of big mountain charging ski. I think that's kind of the best way to describe it.
Yeah, and there wasn't much else out there on the market like it. You know, it's just like flat.
Completely flat.
Yeah, completely flat. Lots of metal.
Yep.
Just a stiff, burly board, and you can.
There wasn't much rocker. Like, it was flat underfoot and technically had like some rise, but not much. It was pretty much flat. I really wish we had one.
Yeah.
Before anybody is wondering why we don't have one to compare, we haven't had them probably in a year. I don't think we had any 2024 Corvi.
I don't think we did. I think the 23 was the last.
Also, I don't think Corvi is the plural of Corvus.
Still fun.
It is fun to say. So it still fills the same role in Black Crow's collection. It still is kind of tagged as their big mountain ski. A couple other skis fall under big mountain for Black Crows as well. They have Atris and I think Anima, both in their like big mountain category. So it's not the sole ski, but it kind of feels like still the best for that true, I think, but like traditionally what we think of as big mountain applications.
Yeah, and I think it's slotting itself nicely between those two that you mentioned, the Anima and the Atris.
Yeah, while being a little different too.
Yeah,
maybe a little more directional.
But we talk about how Black Crows doesn't really have like lines, like enforcer, and then different widths.
Right.
So I think that this kind of lines it up a little bit better with that theory. You know, the older Corvus was
totally lost.
That was left field.
Not lost, but it didn't match really anything else in that collection. Can see some. I see your wheels spinning. It did kind of match the Damon.
Yeah.
But when that ski went away, then there were like the flat, lots of metal ski.
Yeah.
Kind of felt like it was a little bit lost.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited about this ski. Bob, you skied it more than I did. Matt Stramecki also skied it more than I did. I did get one awesome day on it. I think I'm probably the only one that skied this length.
I think you might be right.
The 181?
186 was the...
Both you and Matt were on 186 predominantly. But I had a great run on it at our ski test that I'll talk about a little bit. And then we'll bring Matt in here, and Matt and Bob can kind of finish things out. To get started, Bob, do you want to take us through what has changed for construction? And we didn't bring the scale because we got demo bindings on here.
I got some numbers in my mind.
Figured you would.
Will be relatively close.
Yep.
But yeah, this is a little bit different. This is kind of a give and take type of deal with the construction of the ski and how it lines up with the shape and the profile without changing the character, which I think is important.
It's very interesting.
So older Corvus was a poplar wood core ski, poplar and fiberglass with 2 Titanal plates in it. This one is a poplar and beech wood core with 1 Titanal plate. So we're adding a denser wood of the beech, we're thickening the core a little bit, and we're losing a metal plate.
Yep.
So it's that type of give and take. We're giving metal away, and we're taking in denser wood in the beech and a thicker wood core. Not a whole lot else going on with the construction in this ski. That's pretty much it. It just makes a lot more sense when we think about the new shape and profile. But those numbers, we do drop about 75 grams. I want to say 2,075 in the 186, and then the old one was 2,150 about. So it's neither were over 2,200 grams, but the 186 is over 2,000. So there is some heft to it as well, which we saw from the old Corvus, but nothing too crazy. And that's pretty much it for build.
Yeah, it's not not wild.
Not wild.
I kind of like that they keep it relatively simple
Yeah.
in a lot of their skis. No, like, there's carbon here and not here,
Right.
and it's just like, yeah, here's a ski. It's well built.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's about it. Flex pattern, pretty soft.
Yeah, especially in the tips and tails.
Like
That is not old Corvus flex.
No, exactly. And for a ski that, is described or categorized as big mountain,
Yeah.
I would say that that's a pretty soft flex
Yeah.
pattern. But that has really opened up the capabilities and performance of this ski.
Totally.
Can I have that one?
Sure.
Please? So
I have
moving
nothing
on.
to hold over here now.
I know. I'm sorry. You want a Faction Studio One?
No.
So moving on to shape. Shape is very interesting, and like, it really couldn't be that much more different than the previous ski.
They could have changed the name, and I would have been cool with it.
100%. Yeah. So we've gone away from flat. There's now camber underfoot. I will say there's not a lot of camber underfoot, but there is 100% camber underfoot. And then we get a lot of tip and tail rocker. So that's like way different than the previous ski. This is almost kind of like mustache shape.
Right.
So taking a look at the tail here, not quite as long as in the tip, but that's a lot of tail rocker.
Yeah.
So the running surface is a lot different than it used to be. And then they also put, kind of going along with that rocker, is a lot more early taper.
Yeah.
So
Tips and tails.
It's totally, yeah. So it's a very, very modern shape. A little bit of like a pintail there. Probably best for just skin attachment if you're like that kind of big mountain skier. Not sure
Yeah.
if it really accomplishes anything in soft snow.
It's a cool design thing too. I mean, they incorporate that into a lot of their skis.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Similar
Justice
to like
or
the
Octo
finish
or-
of a Nocta too.
Yeah.
So pretty cool. And then what's interesting is, the flex here, you can have a ski back.
Yay.
So the flex pattern is softer. We've got all this increased rocker profile, much more of like a playful shape, but they've sort of countered that by giving it a 25-meter turn radius.
Yeah, and 110 underfoot now as opposed to
Thank
108.
you. Yeah, I meant to start with that.
Yeah.
But it's easy to get like excited about all the other stuff.
I know.
So I think that's kind of interesting. And if you think about like the effective edge of the ski, so say there to the widest part of the tail here, we'll probably there to there, we'll say, that's a 25-meter turn radius. Which is so it's like pretty darn straight, kind of underfoot. So you get like the ability to go straight, let the ski kind of run from that underfoot section, but then you get much more playfulness out of the rocker.
Yeah, it's far more swervy than
Way more.
the older Corvus.
Yeah. So that's about it for construction and shape, I think. I'll give you my experience. I don't know how I didn't film this because I had a point of view camera on my head like the whole ski test, but I must have lost battery or something. But we had great snow for a ski like this at our ski test. We had the first 2 days especially, we had pretty deep conditions. It was really, really nice for testing some wider skis. I would have been like kind of bummed to ski the previous Corvus on that day.
It's nice to have more open zones.
Yeah, exactly. Like I wouldn't have been bummed, but I wouldn't have been excited. This ski on a Stowe powder day was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was like bouncy and playful and fun, but it does still let you go straight and pretty fast and ski pretty aggressively.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really, really cool. And it's kind of got a little atris in it.
Yeah, I felt that too. I felt kind of a better energy
out of this.
coming out of the Corvus. I've never
Yep.
felt like the Atris is particularly responsive.
I just
for
feel
me,
like the
but-
Atris has a similar mix of like maneuverability and stability. Like I
Yeah.
can ski the Atris pretty quick in the trees and stuff like that, and then like get out on a groomer and ski it fast.
Yeah.
And I felt like this had a similar blend. So they're definitely bringing it into like more of a modern performance category, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure.
Anything else you want to know from me before I turn myself into Matt?
Not particularly, like we'll probably, do minimal discussion about on-piste performance as a 110 with a 25-meter turn radius. There's
Well, Bob,
not a whole lot, but
we have some footage of you guys skiing it on groomers, so
Yep.
if you want to talk about that, that would be fantastic. I am going to exclude myself from that conversation because
Okay.
I've never skied it on piste.
on groomer, on anything other than powder.
I have
Lucky
only
guy.
ever skied the new Black Crowes Corvus on it's probably like what, an 8-inch morning?
But like, yeah, but on,
Tons of drifts and stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it felt good.
Yeah. So we're gonna see what Matt has to say, and we'll go get him right now.
Matt, how are you?
Hello, everyone.
Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
I feel like you're the chosen one in this discussion in terms of new Corvus, off-piste powder skiing. You kind of got the best of it.
I'm quite familiar, yeah.
Jeff and I talked a lot about how this new shape is the big driver with the much more flexible nature than the old Corvus was. Just more rocker and taper throughout and that long turn radius. Those things really made this thing stand out in softer snow.
For sure.
So take us through kind of start with your deepest day, and then we'll work to more turning stuff.
Sure, yeah. So I was fortunate enough to get these out on a day where we had probably like 30 inches of fresh snow.
Yeah, it just kept snowing that night. I just remember.
Crazy,
Yeah.
crazy. And I was on it all day, and all day I was smiling just because of how much fun they were. And the first thing that I really noticed, and I said it in my written portion, was, it was described by Jeff to me, that this thing was just a missile.
Yeah.
And it's not really how I thought of it at all. It was more of just a nimble kind of maneuverable fun ski.
Yep.
Like I think that flex pattern that you were talking about, and then this drastic taper in the tail here, just really made it super wiggly in the trees.
Yeah.
Like you just kind of let them run a little bit, and super easy to change direction. And I was skiing everything that day, but mostly just really steep trees. A bunch of snow, hitting cliff drops, all that kind of stuff that you would expect to be able to do on something like this. And it just wanted to do more all day long. And another thing is that they're not super heavy.
Yeah,
too.
they're a little bit lighter than the old ones.
Yeah.
But just over 2,000 grams, we were saying, in the 186. So
Right.
that's not that heavy for a 110.
No, not at all.
And then you add in the mobility of the flex and that taper, and yeah, it feels lighter.
Yeah, totally. And the 186 was just right for the eastern trees. I do think that going up to just over 190, I think it's 192 is the next size up.
Yeah.
That is what I would want if I was out west. I think that, here it just might be a little bit too much, but the 186 was just right. And I'm trying to think of like certain situations, but it was pretty much just the full day.
Yeah.
that I was just so pleased with how easy they were to turn and how much I didn't even have to think about it. Like sometimes with skis like this, you kind of need to plan your turns beforehand and like really look really far out on your line. And with these, I didn't have to. It was just super intuitive, and pretty much anywhere I wanted to go, they were more than happy to do so at a moment's notice. Really easy to put sideways due to that tail rocker and taper and that softer flex. Just an overall blast. Like it's hard to really, use other words besides
Right,
that.
sure.
Yeah.
I kind of find that like it's sort of counterintuitive to think about a ski with a longer turn radius as being more capable of making sideways turns.
Right.
But that's kind of what you're getting here. And we had just mentioned, we downstairs were talking about the QST-X, same type of deal.
Yep.
Long turn radius, super easy to get sideways.
Yeah.
So don't think that because a ski has a longer turn radius that it is harder to turn.
Yeah.
Rather, it's in more of a free ride capacity. Seems like it's just easier to smear and drift and have more what I consider modern free ride fun
100%.
with that.
Yeah, totally.
And if you had, it's interesting because if you had skied the old Corvus, I would imagine you would have had a very different experience in that deep day.
Yeah, 100%.
That's my feeling.
That flat tail would
Yeah.
have really been quite cumbersome for sure.
Yeah.
And from what I remember, there was a little bit less rocker in the older one.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
yeah.
it's just the old one was very flat overall, tip to tail, like
yeah.
zero camber, totally flat tail, just a different ski than most people have ever been on.
Totally.
And it makes sense when you're thinking about kind of the design from Chamonix, when these guys are looking up at these mountains and they're like, I want to get from top to bottom as fast and smooth as possible.
Yeah.
This one, I think, takes it to the more playful and creative level.
Yeah. Yeah. It blends those. Now I think the Anima kind of takes that
Yeah.
role, and then this gets a little bit more of that Atris kind of attitude.
Yeah.
But it splits the two very, very similarly. Like, it just splits it down the middle and combines it into this one.
I'm glad you said that, because Jeff and I talked about that too before you magically appeared.
Yeah.
So that was good. Yeah, let's move a little bit more towards the non-deep days. We had also mentioned that no one's buying a 110 ski for carving and on-trail capacity, but
No.
you know what? We end up there. So it's at least worth discussing.
Sure.
I guess I was impressed with the ski's groomer performance. I kind of prefer a longer turn radius in a wider ski for groomers, just because it's really fun to kind of play with different edge angles where you're not kind of locked into that across the hill turn. And then when you get on something that has this type of flex, if it had a shorter radius, it would really start to bounce around and you would lose some of your stability. So having that longer turn shape, I think, is beneficial for a ski of this flex and this width. It's not going to win any ski bum races or carving contests on the hill.
No.
I did feel like I did experience some of that tip kind of getting bent a little bit too much or pushing through the tails a little too hard. And even though we had pretty soft groomers that we were on, like, it still was, it came up a little short, but
Yeah.
that's to be expected. Again, no one's buying this for on-trail performance. It's really all about deep snow, and I think now more than ever, tighter trees. And I know we have good footage of you, I think on Gondolier, skiing this on a groomer, and you make it look good. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the first couple turns I remember being kind of waiting for it to engage.
Yeah.
And then that 25-meter radius kind of gets back into the the front of your mind, and you're like, oh yeah, I kind of have to wait for this thing to really get it to turn. And then it just made sense given its application. And I did find that when you really drove the tips, you could get it to hook up pretty quickly, but you had to be at a high edge angle and really push into it just to get it to form that, just to get the ski to manipulate and be able to get it into that turn shape. But then when you skied it more flat, and then we're just kind of doing it in more surfy style, because of that long turn radius, it didn't feel catchy or anything. So yeah, I mean, you do have to kind of wait for it to come to really get it to go, but once you're there, it's nice and stable. Like, I don't think it needs that, that full sheet of metal that it got taken out.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would want it there either. I think that I like the 1.5 now.
Yeah.
It provides enough dampness and torsional stiffness when you are carving, and that other laminate that they had in there, I don't think is really needed for this philosophy.
It was needed in that ski, but it's definitely not needed in this.
Sure.
So I think the keys are, you want to ski it centrally if you're on anything that's non-powder, and then as you had mentioned, it's just really fun to play around with the tail. So you can kind of ski it more rearward in softer snow and powder, kind of use that more surfy and smeary character.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, overall, pretty impressed with this new ski. I mean, Jeff and I kind of joked that they could have called it something else.
Yeah.
And that would have been fine. There's very few kind of shreds of similarity between this ski and the old ski.
Yeah.
And for better or for worse, I'm sure some people will miss that straight flat, like burly Corvus from yesteryear, and then there's a whole new group of people that are going to appreciate this new one. So, take your pick and go on from that.
Yeah.
Do you have any other performance things you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
Sure. Yeah. So those days the day before that 30-inch pow day that we were talking about, we were out skiing these.
Yep.
And I did find that on trail, when the snow became pretty chopped up and pretty variable, I did find that the tips got pretty deflected.
Yeah.
And like there's not a ton of splay in them either. And I felt like sometimes they kind of wanted to dive. They were either getting deflected or they were diving. So that leads you to have to ski a little bit more centrally. But I do think that would be remedied by sizing up.
Yeah.
And when you do get those really variable conditions, you're probably going to be going pretty fast down a steep mountain face, given that's the application of it. So if that is your application, probably want to size up if you're between sizes.
Yeah.
But other than that, fantastic. So much float, super easy to maneuver, and just all around fun. Like that was my main thing, is just like it went from this all business attitude before, and now it's taking on that more fun and playful pure free ride stance now. So I think that's pretty much all of my experience, but
Yeah.
I loved them.
Cool.
Absolutely loved them.
Some comparisons we can throw around, like a Rosganol Center Free 110. I think that's right there with this ski. Same type of deal with more metal in the middle and more rocker in the tips and tails. Solomon QST Blank, I think at 112, kind of makes sense in terms of being, a real floaty ski with some dramatic rocker. It's different in that it has a much shorter turn radius. I think that's kind of the main difference between like a Blank and something like this. There's not a whole lot that have this long turn shape.
Yeah.
Did any come to your mind, or is...
In terms of shape, Revolt 114,
Yep.
they have a very similar tail. So if you like that rudder style tail, that the Revolt 114 and this would have a similar feel. That's all I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's more.
Yeah.
One of the new Armada Declivity X108, I think that's kind of a similar style of ski.
Yeah.
And even in the movement from a little bit more, that 108 used to be a little bit more kind of directional, and now it's a little bit more playful.
Yeah.
So there's some comparisons there we can draw.
Totally.
But yeah, I mean, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions on comparisons or anything else regarding these new 2025 Black Crowes Corvus skis. Matt, thank you so much for joining us and magically appearing and sharing your time. We're all jealous of the time you spent on these. I think you got the best of it.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, once again, reach out if you have any questions, and we will see you soon.